How are you?
Hi, I am doing amazing. We're finally seeing seasons in LA a little bit, so I'm happy with that.
You're essentially in Canada. Once it starts to get cold, you're essentially in Canada down there. That's how it
Pretty
works.
much, pretty much.
How's your happy release day, by the way? We're taping this on release day. A bit weird because I'm sure you'd normally go out. You'd normally,
Yes, yes, it's definitely weird to be releasing an album during these times in general, but especially not being able to kind of team like link up with the people that you created with and the fans and everything, and like you would usually do.
Are you going to do something special? You're going to have a meal or a glass of wine or something like that?
I'm probably gonna just like be in my garden later, play with my dogs, like hang around. Definitely gonna eat some good stuff today. I haven't decided yet though, and probably a little champagne.
Nothing wrong with it. So I'm excited
Yeah,
to talk to you about your career here and talk about some of the songs you've written. First off, I want to go back to the beginning with you because you've been working in the industry since you were around 9 years old. I read that Debbie Allen, who we spoke to on our show maybe about 2 or 3 months ago, kind of discovered you. Would you mind telling us that
yeah.
story?
Yeah, so basically, I ended up going to like a dance. Like my childhood best friend was going to her dance academy out in Texas, and I decided like, oh, okay, I want to take dance too. You know what I mean? And when I went there, I happened to meet her, and she asked, "Does anybody sing?" And everybody was like, "That girl, she's been singing the whole time." You know what I mean? And so I was definitely a singer who wanted to dance at that time, being surrounded by so many just incredible people. And she introduces me, from that moment to the world of acting. She's like, okay, you can sing, and now you can dance a little bit. You got to work on it. But she was really tough on me in the greatest way, honestly, and just introduced me to a whole new world.
I'm,
And yeah.
that world opens up. Right? I mean, there's, you were in the film Hairspray, you were in the Gilmore Girls, you were in Everybody Hates Chris. I know, and just from talking to people on this show, that being a child actor is so hard. There's hundreds of auditions, there's rejection. You have to understand at an early age, not to mention long hours. These are things that we typically learn when we're much older. What did it teach you about perhaps the realities of the entertainment industry?
Well, I think starting off, coming from the acting world and that type of thing was much harder than going into like my songwriting days because it was a lot more like, you're going on three auditions a day sometimes. And, it's just a difference, and you have to show up on time and you have to do that. That's completely different from the world that I'm in now, but it actually prepared me in a lot of different ways, and the ability to kind of jump into a character of somebody else's mental
Mm,
headspace. It prepared me in the having the capabilities to show up on time and be a professional because
yeah.
I've been doing it for a very long time. And a lot of other things that I didn't realize until I jumped into it. Honestly.
What made you make the jump? What made you go from acting to songwriting?
I decided probably around 17. I was like, okay, I want to be able to focus more on music and I want to have fun with my hair and have fun with all of those other things. And usually I was cast as, the girl next door, not the kid with blue hair. You know what I mean? It's those types of things. And so I knew in order for me to have the artistic freedom that I truly, truly wanted, and also just to become a great songwriter, I had to spend time and energy on that. So I was like, okay, I don't want to be on screen anymore. I want to be behind the scenes and I want to work on my craft again. And so I started to do voiceover, which allowed me to be able to afford to be a
Yeah.
songwriter in the beginning.
You have this acting career that's starting to take off and it's doing well, and then you were telling me about it. It was a bit of a hard call.
It was because what I had built my whole life off of is going to auditions and doing that and being on a set and being kind of that child actor mode. And then it was more so I want to do what's good for my soul now, and that was awesome in the beginning. But towards the end of my teenage years, I was just like, all right, I want to go back to where I started, and that's with music.
Yeah.
So it was definitely an interesting transition, but much needed.
Well, yeah. Let's take a listen to how that transition worked out. This is from the new record. Take a listen to this.
I got so much baggage, it started blending in. Don't open that door, that closet's full of skeletons. And I know that I probably should warn you before we begin.
Ah, yeah. That is Tayla Parx with Fixer Upper. I love a minor four chord. I was going to nerd out for a quick second there. I love a minor four chord so much.
Yes.
You know, I
I love that you know what that is.
I'm glad 6 of our listeners who know what we're talking about are able to. That song is about finding yourself. This whole album is about finding yourself again. Can you tell me about? Can you tell me about that?
It's about finding yourself after a heartbreak. You know what I mean? When with We Need to Talk, it was more about saying, okay, I've been afraid of love all of my life, and now I'm gonna dive in. And we saw that it ended up, with me getting my feelings hurt, like for one of the first times in my life. And I was like, okay, here's what the next album is gonna be about: is me coping with that. And throughout the album, you kind of see different modes. Sometimes I started off in turn up mode, and it was like, I'm gonna forget about you, and all of these different forms of coping. And then it ended up me meeting someone new, and with Fixer Upper, I'm having to explain, look, I've been through some things. I'm gonna let you know I have skeletons in the closet, and I have all of these things, but I think that we can make something beautiful together.
Is the writing therapeutic?
Oh, completely. The
Yeah.
writing is one of my coping mechanisms. So it's honestly my biggest way of getting my emotions out, inadvertently, like through without me having to say, "Oh, I'm gonna sit down and talk about this." It's a really sly way for me to just kind of have that journal and for everybody to be tuning in.
Do you do it right away? Like when you get that bad text or when you start getting those bad feelings, do you just run to the piano right away or?
Well, sometimes I'll write down an idea. I'll say, like I had an idea for this type of lyric, and I knew, I was like, okay, these are the emotions that I'm having right now, and this is the kind of arc of the story that I'm telling, And in the beginning processes of the album, before I even start, I'll just probably be for a good few months just writing out, this is what I'm going through. And then later on, I kind of let it come naturally. When we're in the studio, I'm like, okay, play me the things that, make you so excited if I'm writing to a track. And then sometimes it's let me sit down and create these chords. And, it's just, I allow it to happen different ways. And I think that that's where you find the magic. There is no right or wrong way to make a song. But with this one in particular, it was more so about, okay, we've written down all these little pieces that we want to say and all these different emotions. Like when somebody hurts you and you're like, have a fun time, at McDonald's because you can't even cook anyway, and putting that in my song Sad. And it eventually turned out 6 months later into a full song.
I'm happy to hear you say there's no right or wrong way to do this, because it kind of brings me to the next point I wanted to talk to you about, is that you're very honest about the realities of working in the music industry. And I think the industry that you are in can often, and this perhaps is my perspective on it, can reward an unrelenting culture, can reward a culture where you don't stop, you don't get off the treadmill, you hustle nonstop, you are always working. And you've been really candid about burnout. You've been really candid about the effect that can take on the mental health. And it feels antithetical. Like it feels opposite of what we get a lot on our Instagram from artists that we love. I wonder if you could tell me about your decision to be honest about that.
I think that there is, by all means, there's a time when you got to go hard and you got to do that. And there's different points, but you have to understand the balance of it. You know what I mean? Like there was a point where, and there's sometimes still some points where I'm like, we're doing 3 and 4 songs a day. But I also had to find the balance between saying, we're going to sit and we're going to breathe today, or this week we're not going to write anything at all. There's a time and place for everything, you know what I mean? And it's nice to know that you can go full throttle, but the biggest part is consistency and efficiency. No matter what you do in life, it's all about how consistent you are and how efficient you are at doing it. And if you are, kind of so close to burning out, you get a little less efficient and a little less consistent, and it feeds more into that burnout, because then you start being less productive. Right. And then that starts affecting your confidence, and then it's just a snowball effect. So if you can proactively prevent burnout right away, you can effectively avoid that for the most part. And that's not to say that you're not going to experience anxiety and all of those things, but you're being proactive about preventing them, and also supplying yourself with the tools. So if those things do hit, you got a way out.
Only tell me as much as you want to tell me here, but what did you have to go through to learn that lesson?
So much. There was a point where it was like, I'm doing over 200 songs a year. Oh, and then I thought that was, very normal thing for me, And then years after that, it would say showing panic attacks. And then years after that, it
Yeah.
eventually showed in me having seizures. Like literally it was crazy. It was just a thing I remembered. I was reading an email. And next thing I knew, I woke up on the floor. And not knowing, that was one of the scariest things in my life, because I have a very much so a type of personality that's like, my body had to tell me to shut down, you know what I mean? And those are just signs from a higher being that's just saying, look, if you're not going to listen to the things that you know that you need for yourself, then sometimes you have to be showed that. And I'm very happy, because it allowed me to come up with just even more efficient ways to work, and also to set an example also, and be a part of a culture shift for creatives.
I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yes, I'm actually happier than I've ever been. You know what I mean? And more motivated than I've ever been. So I'm thankful.
We're going to play another clip here. Take a listen to this.
Close the door, lose the key, leave my heart on the mat for me. I was young eternally. There's an end to infinity.
If you're just tuning in, my name is Tom Power. You're listening to Q. Tayla Parx is my guest. She's got an album of her own out now called Coping Mechanisms, but she is the songwriter behind some of the biggest songs in the radio right now. And this is one of them. This is Infinity by Mariah Carey from a few years ago. It was kind of her big comeback anthem. And here's an interesting thing about it. It was called her divorce anthem. You were in your early 20s back then. With all respect, the idea of a never married 22-year-old writing a divorce anthem is really interesting. How do you approach that situation when writing outside of your lived experience, and for someone like Mariah Carey?
When I first got into this industry, people would be like, "Oh, you're too young to, write for, these people, because you haven't lived through anything. You're too this, you're too that, or you're this, and you're supposed to write these types of songs." And then I just kind of was like, you know what? This is where my acting experience comes into it. And also this is where my empathy comes into it. If you can listen to somebody enough and be able to be empathetic and listen to what they're trying to tell you. I thank Mariah, because she was really, really open about the things that she wanted to talk about. And, I had some incredible co-writers, Ilse and Priscilla, we were just like, yo, we were scared she was going to go be in the room across the way with Brian Michael Cox and Jermaine the whole night. We were like, dang, she knows them already. She's probably not even going to, hear our song, our chords that we're starting. And then she comes in and she starts being, well, obviously, Mariah Carey. She's like, this is what we're going to write about. This is my story. And I was just so blown back. First of all, this is a legendary, artist.
Yeah.
But also just to see that brilliance in the room, before your eyes, and also be a part of it, and a part of, having that trust where she's like, I think that you can understand what I'm saying when I say this. It was a collaboration of a lifetime, for sure.
I mean, it sounds like it. And what a beautiful example of empathy to be able to, and also to be able to blow past her being Mariah Carey to get there. You know what I mean?
Yes, I went through a phase where I was like, okay, I wanted to go through the different eras of music for me. So I was like, I remember the artists that were like the icons, I had to do the Mariahs and the Christinas and, anybody that I felt like, yo, you had an impact on music, and I want to learn from you. I want to soak that up. And there is so many different things that you can learn in just a conversation. And Alicia, for instance, I've really been really, really lucky to be able to do that. And then it was like, it changes over years though. It changes, then it starts to go into, now I want to do this genre, and now I want to do this little thing. But all of it is a learning experience for sure.
Well, it's funny to hear you say, you wanted to talk to these icons, these people who were icons when you were kids, because you have been part of creating icons in our culture as well. I mean, just take a listen to this.
One taught me love, one taught me patience, and one taught me pain. Now I'm so amazing to have loved and I've lost, but that's not what I see. So look what I got, look what you taught me, yeah, for that I say thank you.
That is Ariana Grande and Thank You Next, co-written by my guest Tayla Parx. I want to read a quote I read about you. It says, Tayla spends her time teasing lyrical confessions out of music's high-profile stars. I mean, what a great example is that song. You have Ariana Grande singing in a way I'd never really heard before, specifically about people, often who were well-known, be it Mac Miller or Pete Davidson, like really well-known people she was once in a relationship with. So given that song specificity and its success, what do you make of that line about yourself?
I'm thankful. I'm thankful that people hear why I say, a song is tailor made. Because when I say a song is tailor made for an artist, it's me putting that energy and saying, this is what they would say. This is how they would say it. This is the chords it would be over. This is, and I'm really, really painting that picture. So I'm really thankful that somebody is seeing that work.
How did that song come about?
I was watching a Jane Fonda documentary.
I've seen that one, the one on HBO. I've seen that one, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she has a really, really interesting way of telling her story. And she went through the chapters, and the chapters were different guys. And I thought it was a really, really cool way of doing it. And I wanted to hear a song like that too. And we went to the studio the next day, and Ariana was like kind of in the same place too, where it was like, let's talk about the history. And I was like, a really cool way of doing it might be this, you know what I mean? And it just kind of turned into a whole different thing, between me, Ari, and Vic. Just really, really making it into like, how do we do this to where it's still tasteful?
Yeah.
How do we do this where it's still honest?
Yeah.
And yeah, we were just worried about us also just being respectful, and that's one thing that Ariana wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I mean, I bet, because when you're at that level of fame, and I have the kind of fame that I call it a Canadian E-list, but when you're when you have that kind of fame like Ariana Grande has, those private relationships are really all you have. The stuff you have behind closed doors are really all you have left when everything else of your life. It was such a risk that ultimately paid off to open up like that.
She really, honestly, doing that allowed, I think, the space for every other, artist to say, especially, in the pop star lane, to say, I want to be real now. You know what I mean? And usually that's the thing that everybody says, like, this is the most honest I've ever been. But we heard it, in the music, in the lyrics, in the melody, and we heard it in her delivery as well. So I was really thankful to be just a part of that,
Where were you when you found out it was number one?
Where was I when I found out that Thank You Next was number one?
Because it was your first number one, right?
Yeah, it was my first number one on the Billboard. Yes, so I was like, on Billboard Hot 100, because we had like Love Lies and Panic at the Disco and all of those things. But for Radio Play and Hot 100, we were like, yo, this is all of our first one on this exact chart, and we did it together. You know what I mean? People that we've known each other for years, and kind of seen the hard work that each of us has done, even outside of the things that we've done together. So I think it's one of those things where we were just like, okay, time to celebrate. It felt like a year-long celebration. We went straight from therapy and celebrating the fact that we had this body of work even before it came out. We were celebrating, the fact that we did something we were proud of.
So was it a text? Was it a phone call? What was it?
It was a text. It was like a screenshot. We have a group chat. And me and Ariana and Victoria have a First Wives Club a group chat thing. So it's we saw it there, and then of course we just started seeing it from our team members too, because our team really, really pays attention to it. Whereas I'm the type of person, I usually find out last because I don't want to know. I don't want to know whether it's doing really good or really bad. Just tell me a week later. I like to avoid those types of things. But of course that was something that was my phone was blowing up, and we had just so much to celebrate. We were really, really, really thankful.
I want to circle back to something you said there that relates to something you said off the very top. I asked you about being an actor when you were a kid, and you said, I think that being an actor when I was a kid leads me to be a better songwriter because I can understand people. I can empathize better with people. And you're playing a part with them. You're trying to get into their heads, whether it be Mariah Carey or Ariana Grande, and you're saying, let me understand what you're going through. Let me use my acting chops to figure out how to turn this into music. So when it's changed then, and you're not trying to empathize with anybody else, You're not having to act. You're just being yourself and you're writing for yourself. I can see you smiling there. What do you get out of that?
I think I get freedom out of that because there's the thing that I like about songwriting is it's hitting a bullseye
Yeah.
every time. How can you hit that bullseye? The thing that I love about being an artist is there is no bullseye. There's literally just you vomiting your emotions out, pretty much. You know what I mean? And so they both give me something completely different. One gives me structure, the other one gives me freedom. And it's really awesome just to be able to allow that to happen naturally. Like I said, when I create my own music, it's usually a process that takes a few months because I'm just writing down little random spurts of emotion in my phone. I don't even know what I'm going to say until months later because I'm like, oh, this is all the things that have happened over this time.
It's a really beautiful record, and it's really. I'm quite grateful to talk to someone of your gift, and thank you so much for making the time for us.
Thank you.
We're going to close things out with Dance Alone, and we've talked a lot about empathy, and we've talked a little bit about music as a form of therapy. People are going through a very hard time right now, especially as the winter comes. Being further stuck inside, and perhaps going back to the way we felt in March and April. What do you hope an album like this might bring them?
I hope that this album gives you a few coping mechanisms, honestly, and also makes you feel okay with however you're getting through your hardest days and however you're experiencing your best days. I think that's what this whole point of the album is to show my highs and my lows and let these people know that you're a little less alone because I'm experiencing the exact same thing and here's a soundtrack to go with it.
Hey, it's been lovely to talk to you. Thank you for your time.